is one of my favorite seasons. It is mock draft season. The Atlanta Falcons had the 15th overall pick. So we're going to run through a mock draft for the Dirty Birds today, but super quick right off the top. Make sure to go ahead, click that thumbs up button down below. I asked this because if you want more draft content, let me know by liking the video. That way I can get a good pulse of what everyone out there is looking for so I can give you the content you're searching for. But let's get right into it. I use the Pro Football Focus mock draft simulator, which they're all kind of broken-ish, but this is probably the best user-friendly one. And with the first overall pick, PFF had Shedeur Sanders going to the Tennessee Titans, followed by Cam Ward going to the Cleveland Browns. Then Travis Hunter ends up in New York with the Giants. Tetairoa McMillan, the star receiver from Arizona, going to New England. Mason Graham is off to Duval County, the superior defensive lineman out of Michigan. Abdul Carter falls to the Raiders at 6. I don't think they're going to go edge. Will Johnson out of Michigan joins Sauce Gardner in East Rutherford. Malaki Starks, the star safety out of Georgia, going to Carolina. We got Nick Scourton out of A&M off to New Orleans. Ashton Jeanty to the Bears at 10. That's a unique one for PFF. Calvin Banks, the tackle out of Texas, going to the 49ers. Will Campbell off to Dallas from LSU. Another offensive tackle off the board here, Josh Simmons from Ohio State to the Dolphins. And how about 4 in a row as the left tackle out of the Golden Gophers is going to the Colts. And then finally, I was on the clock, and I went with Mykel Williams, edge rusher out of Georgia. Now, let me tell you that I do my mock drafts with a bit of a balance between what I'm hearing and reading versus what I would do if I were the GM. But early on, we don't really have a whole lot of hearing and seeing, so I got to go off of what I would do. But as we get closer to April, I'll base more of my mock drafts off of what I believe the Falcons will do versus what I would like them to do. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the prospect Mykel Williams. First and foremost, from an athletic makeup standpoint, the guy's a stud. 6'5", 265 pounds. I wouldn't say he reminds me of Trayvon Walker, but from a physical makeup, the two are quite similar. And if you recall, Walker's stock dramatically rose during the offseason because of his physical tools and traits. And that is by far the biggest pro for Williams. He's an athletic freak. I also love that in one of the biggest games of the year for the Dogs, he came to play 2 sacks in the SEC championship. Now, the big con is the lack of production. Last year in 2023, 4.5 sacks. Okay, set yourself up for a big breakout 2024 campaign. That didn't really happen from a production standpoint. He did deal with an ankle sprain early on in the season, but still, I think everyone was hoping for a little bit more firepower from Williams. I have a rule, if you remember watching our draft content last year, and the rule is I don't like drafting edge rushers without production in college football. I can see how a receiver goes from not a lot of production to a ton in the NFL based on the quarterback he had, based on the offensive scheme he was in college. In college football, edge rushers are the same as pro football edge rushers. Like, more often than not, it is just about beating the man in front of you. There'll be some stunts and things like that wrinkled in, but it's not quite as complex as college is. So when I don't see production in college football at the edge rusher position, I've got red flags going off. Having said all this, I am willing to break my rule for Williams because this is the 15th overall draft pick. So we're not talking about a surefire thing that's going to be a top 5, top 10 draft pick. And also, I think about Trayvon Walker. And I know it's unfair to compare the two, but Walker's a prime example of someone who didn't have crazy production at UGA and then was the first overall draft pick a few months later thanks to a great combine and pro day and yada, yada, yada. Aiden Hutchinson has definitely been the star of that draft class for being the second overall pick to the Lions. Walker quietly, back-to-back 10-plus sack seasons. So if I can get 10 sacks out of Mykel Williams at the 15th overall draft pick, despite the lack of production his last year in Athens, I am more than happy with that if I'm the Atlanta Falcons. So here are some other edge rusher targets because I feel like this has to be the position Atlanta goes in April. Abdul Carter, I just put up there just as a frame of reference of some of the top edge rushers in this class. He will not be available at pick number 15. If it's not Mykel Williams, I would go with James Pierce. And he went to Tennessee, is an incredible athlete. Not as big as Williams, so he could stand to add a couple of LBEs, but overall, there's a lot to like about Pierce's game. And then as for some down linemen, more of like your 5 technique true defensive ends in a 3-4 defense, Nick Scourton and Shedeur Stewart out of Texas A&M are some other candidates to watch for. Before we get on with the rest of my mock draft, let me know who you want to pick in round number 1. For me, the rankings go probably Mykel Williams, Will Johnson, who is definitely / probably not going to be there at 15, but there's always a couple of, unexpected things that happen in the draft. No one thought it would take 15, 16 picks last year for the first defensive player to go off the board. So expect the unexpected when it comes to the NFL draft. And then I put James Pierce at number 3 for Atlanta. So after going edge rusher in round 1, in round 2, I went corner. Darien Porter out of Iowa State. You usually don't think of DBU when you think of Ames, Iowa, but Porter is one of the most, if not the most unique prospect that comes to recent mind. And I'm going to tell you all about him in just a second. But first, I got to give a quick shout out to our sponsor today, which is Factor. Ready to optimize your nutrition this year? Factor has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating well easy. They're dietitian approved and ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes, so you can fuel up and feel great no matter what life throws at you. Factor can help you feel your best all day long with wholesome smoothies, breakfast, grab and go snacks, and more add-ons. So reach your goals this year with ingredients you can trust and convenience that can't be beat. Factor is super fun and simple. I know I use it when I'm kind of in a pinch and I'm kind of hurrying from one thing to the next and I don't have time to cook a nice meal at home. With Factor, I can save the time and still get a nice meal. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/FalconsChat50off and use code FalconsChat50off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code FalconsChat50off at factormeals.com/FalconsChat50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Getting back to Darien Porter, this is not some household name, right? But I do want to put him on your radar. He's a 6'4" corner. I don't remember the last 6'4" corner that was talked about going in day 2 of the NFL draft. Now, he started off as a wide receiver at Iowa State. He is an older prospect. He was there for, all of COVID. Nearly 6 years in Ames. So he's on the older end, which can turn some GMs off. But he is an incredible athlete. When I saw 6'4", I thought, okay, what's the catch? Is he super tall but kind of slow? No. How about him setting the high school state championship Iowa records in the 200 and 400-meter dash? So I've got the athleticism, and I've got the length and the width, and now I'm starting to think this could be an ultimate day 2, round 2 pick for the Falcons. Last year for the Cyclones, 3 interceptions, 2 pass breakups. Did not fill up the box score, so to speak, with a whole bunch of pick sixes or fun splashy plays like that, but I'll be honest, I'm picking traits here. And I don't love that mindset usually, but 6'4", 200 and 400-meter dash, record breaker in high school. I'm sure the records weren't too high for Iowa, but still, 6'4". I just can't get past the length and the twitchiness, the quickness, all those traits. Plus, he's pretty raw as a player. He converted from receiver to cornerback halfway through his time in college. So, Raheem Morris, kind of get your hands dirty on this one and coach him up because you are getting an excellent mold to start with. 6'4" corner. I know sometimes people make too big of a deal out of size and height and weight and hand size. If there is one position where it's not a big, or it is a big deal, it's cornerback. The difference between 6'4" and 6'2" could be the difference between a pass breakup and getting mossed and being on ESPN before Monday Night Football. So I love the idea of finding someone with that size and that height and that range and wingspan in round 2 of the draft. Moving on to round number 4, and this will be the last pick of the mock draft because we just don't know where Atlanta is going to be picking in day 3 just yet, but I'm going to go with Seth McLaughlin, the Ohio State center. If you're wondering where you recognize this name, it's because he was at Alabama. He had a snafu, we'll call it, against Michigan in the college football semifinal at the end of the game. But he is one smart cookie. Plus, he's from the greater Atlanta area, went to Buford High School, 6'4", 305 pounds, so good size altogether. But he graduated from Alabama in 2.5 years, 4.0 GPA. So he has the brains, he has the IQ. He's one of the smartest players, if not the smartest player on the field. He's known for his blitz recognition and pickups and his ability to just read the entire defense. And you want that in your center, right? You want a center, especially with a second-year quarterback who could use a little bit of help when reading defenses at the next level. So the reason why I'm going with a center in round number 4 is, speaking of former day 3 draft picks, Drew Dalman, who has been an excellent center for the Falcons the last couple of seasons. His rookie contract is up. He's going to be a free agent in March if the Falcons do not give him a contract extension before then. Last 2 seasons, he was top 5 amongst all centers in the eyes of Pro Football Focus, and I would not be surprised if Drew Dalman gets a contract offer in free agency somewhere in the neighborhood of what Creed Humphrey, would throw on screen for you, got from the Chiefs last offseason or 2 off seasons ago. I think we're going to see Dalman become the highest paid center in football, or at least the second highest paid center in football. He's been that good, and centers are hard to come by. So my guess is someone, say like the Chicago Bears, who had a bad interior offensive line, Caleb Williams, under duress for much of the year, will throw the bag at Dalman. And if that happens, I'm not trying to shoo him away. I'd love for Drew to come back to the Falcons. But if that were to happen, maybe Atlanta feels like, hey, that's a little bit out of our price range. We'll just go to the draft and find a new Drew Dalman. Because it's not like Dalman was some first-round draft pick they can't replace. No, they found him in round 4. So Terry Fontenot, who was a college scout for basically his entire time with New Orleans before getting promoted, get back on the recruiting trail and find yourself your next Drew Dalman in round 3 of the draft. So revisiting the 3 picks I made for Atlanta, no third rounder. Remember, that belongs to the Patriots for Matthew Judon. I went Mykel Williams and Darien Porter in rounds 1 and 2. 2 guys that I am betting a ton on for their athletic traits. And that might backfire, right? If those 2 picks don't work out, it would not be very difficult to figure out why that was the case. They were taken because of their size, their speed, their strength, and their athletic abilities, and you are hoping that your NFL coaches can do that, coach them up. And then Seth McLaughlin, the Falcons might need a new center, and he could be one of your better options in day 3 of the draft. So how would you grade my 3-pick mock draft for Atlanta for their first 3 picks? A, B, C, D, or F? I'd give myself like a B, right? I mean, let's be honest. You don't have a third-round draft pick. You're not going to be coming out as great as some other teams that have third-rounders. So for me, I feel like a B is a fair grade. All right, that will do it for us on today's episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe down below, and if you haven't already, hit that thumbs up button.